Hey, this is Poden, and this is the third part to my Silent Hill Shattered Memories for the Nintendo Wii First Impressions video. Now, the last two videos I discussed the general introduction to this new title, explained a bit of what it was, and talked about some things that a lot of fans weren't really looking forward to about Team Climax and about this new title. Now I'm going to talk to you about what I think might work on improving this game and what I hope it will actually contain. This is just going to be a list of a few ideas that I'd like to see, and even if it doesn't carry them out, it doesn't mean that it's going to be any worse for me. But this is to sort of give you an idea of what I'm thinking that the description is getting at and why I think it's such a good idea. First of all, I like the general idea that it puts you in such a realistic scenario of going to the extent of even talking to a psychiatrist. That's a little bit of a trap that they put you in that really is going to work out well if they do it right, because it's going to get general information from you, but you're not going to think anything of it because it is a psychiatrist. They're going to give you these weird questions that really analyze your mind and really tell the game a lot about who you are so it can develop further. And on top of that, it checks on small things that you're not going to think about. So if you perform them in the game, all of a sudden, the game's going to know what to change, but you're not going to know what changed it. So it's not like you can choose what path you're going on. You just have to play it how you normally would and experience the game as if it's reading your mind. I'm thinking things like, not only my spider idea, but I read that the idea is to slowly evolve the creatures of Silent Hill into things that more accurately reflect the mindset of the player and the character himself. And so the further you play into the game and the more the game knows you, the more it's going to really reflect your own thoughts and your own feelings. So that explains why if you're afraid of spiders, eventually it's going to develop into a spider-like theme. But I think it'll go further than that. I think it won't just be about fears, even though fears are very important, but I think it'll be about basic preferences and ideals, like the idea of, depending on what you do in an early point in the game, you'll eventually come to either a bar or a diner. And it's little things like this that are going to really change the experience. I mean, none of these changes are going to be extremely drastic, I don't think. Maybe a few of them, but they're all going to be really small things that really get at you. I mean, the thing about atmosphere and horror is not big, scary, monstrous moments. It's little, tiny things that you notice subconsciously but really don't think about on the surface. That's what really gets in your mind and starts messing with you. And I think that if they do this right, this game, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, is going to be the apex of psychological horror for gaming. And if it's done right, it's going to really be difficult for anybody to top it, even their company that made it. So I think that they might be setting the bar a little bit too high for themselves, but hey, if they think they can do it, more power to them. Like I said before, even if they mess up this time, it doesn't mean they won't fix it eventually. Some other things that I think might be some good ideas is like, if the game analyzes that you're afraid of heights, eventually it could get to some sudden forced first-person view of just a huge drop-off right in front of you out of nowhere. Things like that. And different things like whether sudden, in-your-face, boo-like moments scare you more, or if it's subtle, in the corner of your eye movement type things. I mean, there's all kinds of things they can do with this idea. And I really think that they're going to do something that's going to work. I mean, it probably won't be the best game, and it probably won't live up to every single expectation, but at the same time, so many fans are considering boycotting this game that maybe the expectations really aren't all that high in general. Maybe Origin's failure to the fans might actually benefit it. Because maybe eventually when these stubborn fans play the game with these low expectations, they'll be like, hey, this isn't half bad at all. It's definitely better than Origins, and that might actually boost sales. It'll definitely boost the street talk about the game, and it'll certainly help fans start to think positively of Climax. And even if this game's not great, it'll definitely make fans start to think maybe they've got some potential. And I really think that that's important because I believe in this company, and I do hope that they can pull things off as big as they talk. I don't want another Fable thing coming along and it collapsing under the weight of its own build-up. It's a very easy trap to get into, and that's why a lot of companies play it safe and make the same stuff over and over again. It's not anything mind-blowing, but at least they know it won't fail. So I, at the very least, applaud Climax for trying something new, even though that their image isn't all that great in the first place. Another thing I do like about this game is the fact that if they do it right, I like the way that the AI for the creatures is supposed to work out. They're not supposed to just blindly come out at you and attack you. They're supposed to act as an assembled, intelligent unit. They're supposed to, from the description I heard, hunt you, herd you, and block you off and corner you. They're supposed to really act like you are prey, and you're going to have to find out really tricky ways to get out of these situations, otherwise you're going to get slaughtered. I mean, I have in my mind the image of the character Harry Mason running through the streets, hearing things scurrying after him, not knowing where they are. Every time he tries to make a turn, get cut off in some way, and then all of a sudden, when he gets to what seems like a way out, something dropping down in front of him, and he turns around and sees that he's got no way out of things and has to figure out some quick escape, almost MacGyver himself out of it. And I really think that this is going to make a much better horror title. I don't think anybody's really tried this, except for a few smaller horror games that really weren't developed well, and things like Clock Tower 3. These games that are based on horror, but with no combat system whatsoever, or very little, like in Clock Tower 3, really get the idea that horror isn't about fighting. It's about running. But they don't really know how to execute it. And I think that based on the sound of Silent Hill, Shattered Memories, it's different. I think that they know what they're doing. And I think that they realize that by messing up with Origins, they gotta try something new. I don't want to see more games to this series by the same focus of the old series. I don't want to see more of those games. I loved them, but they closed off well. They ended well with the Silent Hill 4 The Room, which, even though a lot of fans don't like it much, I found it a very good game, especially with how quick it was produced. And I think it was a perfect ending to the series. It closed off all of the really necessary questions, and it connected all the games together in a great, but somehow third-person perspective. And that was something absolutely spectacular to me. So, even if Team Silent were to come back in, I wouldn't want them to continue things the way they were, and that's one reason I don't think that I liked Homecoming. I'm tired of that idea. It was good for a while, but now it's done. Everything good must come to an end eventually, otherwise it's just going to shallow out and become something bad. And that's why I support Silent Hill Shattered Memories being so different while maintaining the same concept. Silent Hill shouldn't be one specific series. It's such an unusual and completely different idea that it needs to grow and expand and evolve. It needs to be more of a powerhouse shelter term. It needs to be more of its own category of horror rather than its own series. Sort of like with Resident Evil. I mean, Resident Evil went the other way, though. It went from horror to action, but it still maintained the same name. This isn't what I'm talking about with Silent Hill. What I'm talking about with this is just the idea that Silent Hill can become more than one specific storyline. It can become its own genre altogether. And the only way that's going to be pulled off is if they expand and if they evolve it, but keep it away from the combat and action perspectives and focus more on horror. And that's the one thing Shattered Memories has going for it that none of the old games have. It's completely about horror and nothing about action. And everything I've heard sounds like it's still really strong on gameplay. So, with that, I am done with my first impressions of Shattered Memories, and I hope it wasn't too boring for you. This is Poden, signing off.